Welcome everyone. I'm Isaac Kaleji in Accra and this is Africa Matters. Cocoa prices have recently hit a record high in the world commodity market, but it has left a bitter taste in the mouths of millions of West African farmers who say they are struggling to put food on the table, let alone meet global demand for this decadent ingredient. About 60% of the world's cocoa is produced by small-scale farmers in Ivory Coast and Ghana. During the last season, the El Nino weather pattern brought higher temperatures and rainfall, spurring swollen shoot virus and black pod that damaged cocoa crops. A severe drought followed this year, decreasing production even more and leading to a shortfall in global supply. Gqeberha brings us this report about how farmers are coping in Ghana.
Janet Jamfi used to earn a living by producing cocoa. Her 27-hectare plantation in Ghana was filled with almost 6,000 cocoa trees just last year. Today, it's dotted with cyanide-tainted pools of wastewater. It was destroyed by illegal gold miners, locally known as galamsey.
My toil, my livelihood was destroyed, and it is not easy. My daughter has completed high school, I have 2 sons, and my late sister's child is also with me. It's not as if there is another livelihood anywhere that we can rely on.
Jamfi had been resisting the illegal miners' demands to sell them her plantation. But last June, they forcefully took it away from her. And she's not the only one. Ghana's cocoa marketing board, COCOBOD, says the destruction the miners are causing to plantations is huge.
If you consider the number of farms that have been destroyed, clearly the impact is one that is enormous. It is affecting our productivity in a big way. It's a combination of factors. But certainly, if you have all these farms being lost, productivity affected as a result of illegal mining, then its impact on the industry is one we are really struggling to deal with.
But illegal mining is not the only thing to blame. Climate change, industrial mismanagement, and infectious diseases have also cut production.
It's out of the trees that we have our pods, and through the pods the beans. So if the trees are being affected or infected by this viral disease, it weakens their ability to bear flowers, let alone having fruits on it.
For farmers here, the cocoa crisis is already affecting their livelihoods and families. For millions around the world, it could soon mean cutting back on their favorite sweet treat. Gqeberha, Africa Matters.
Decades of underinvestment and razor-thin profit margins for millions of West African farmers are also compounding the problem. They are struggling to meet half of the global demand for at least 5 million tons of cocoa, the key ingredient in chocolates, sweets, non-alcoholic beverages, and baked goods. The European Union is due to introduce its deforestation-free regulation at the end of this year that bans the import of any beans that have been produced on recently deforested land. So there is little sign of production relief, leaving the chocolate industry in a bit of a bind. Let's take a closer look at the few nations which could potentially fill the supply gap. Cocoa is only produced in large quantities in a handful of countries. About 73% of the world's cocoa is grown in Ivory Coast, Ghana, Cameroon, and Nigeria, according to data from the International Cocoa Organization, with most of it exported to the European Union. Indonesia is the 3rd largest cocoa producer in the world and the biggest in Asia, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization. It's then exported to the US, Malaysia, and Singapore. And in South America, Brazil and Ecuador are major producers, while countries like Peru, Colombia, and the Dominican Republic also grow cocoa beans. The supply deficit recently fueled cocoa prices to hit a record $10,000 per ton on the world commodity market. But despite promises of reform and a bigger share of the industry, African farmers are barely making enough to survive. Let's hear more from Obedowusu Adai. He's the managing campaigner of EcoCare Ghana. He joins me from here in Accra. Why is the status quo not changing when it comes to African cocoa farmers? They continue to be poor despite higher prices globally or on the global stage. And for decades, the inequality has existed. What is the problem?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Actually, there are several reasons why the Ghanaian cocoa farmer and in general the African cocoa farmer remains poor. It has to do with the structure of the cocoa sector in producer countries like Ghana and Gqeberha. Fundamentally, for decades, the regulators of the industry, the Cocoa Board and the CCC, have a certain position that has contributed to making the cocoa farmer poorer. I mean, we also know that in the international market has not been very friendly to the cocoa farmer. For decades, the international market price was terrible. It's just recently that it is beginning to appreciate. But fundamentally, the reason why the cocoa farmer is poor is that the structure of the cocoa sector in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire and other countries in Africa is designed to make the cocoa farmer poor. And I will explain that. One, the cocoa farmer is overly dependent on cocoa board. In the case of Ghana, when it comes to inputs, there are no inputs that are being sold on the market for farmer to go and buy. There is a cocoa board that imports and distributes to cocoa farmers. So in the event that those distributions don't come, cocoa farmer has no sources to get inputs to be able to make their farm more productive. Again, in the case of Ghana, the law is structured in such a way that you cannot sell your cocoa beans to anybody except the Cocoa Marketing Company of Ghana. And they determine how much they will pay you. Although there is a formula that they purport to use, which is dependent on the international market price. But unfortunately, in the case of Ghana, we do forward sales. And all those selling or pricing mechanism has also contributed for decades to make the cocoa farmer poor. The truth is that years ago, about 30, 40 years, the richest farmers in Ghana were the cocoa farmers. And that was because the international market price was very, very lucrative, and so the farmers were very, very well-to-do. But since we started dealing with cocoa as a commodity, being traded on the international exchange market, and all these issues about commodity demand and supply, it has made the cocoa farmer poorer. And so yes, there are several factors that are contributing, but fundamentally because of the international market price and also because of the structure of the cocoa sector in African countries, it is designed to make the cocoa farmer poor.
But how do we break down this structure? What can be done to fix this structure and make sure that the African farmer in cocoa production benefits?
And that's a good question, and that's a question that we have started discussing with Cocoa Board. That, for example, in the case of Ghana, we do forward sales. We sell our cocoa beans a year ahead of the price. That means that right now, as we speak, now that the cocoa is almost $10,000 per ton, Ghana cocoa farmer is still receiving at a rate of around 2,800, which was set in 2021-2022 season. We need to take two steps back. Cocoa Board needs to begin to look at how they set their prices and then discuss how. We know that this, in times past, this system helped cocoa farmers. When the price was low, they still maintained that fairly good price for farmers. But times are changing, the weather is changing, climate change is having effect on the productivity. So we anticipate that production will drop and the prices will appreciate in the coming years. So Cocoa Board needs to take a look at their structure and also probably begin to look at secondary processing of cocoa beans. What has happened is that in Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Cameroon, we export raw beans. If we want to make the cocoa farmer more prosperous and well-to-do, we need to start getting more from the beans than selling it in a raw state. We need to start processing. We need to start making chocolates. There are only few chocolate companies in Ghana that are manufacturing for the international market and for local market. We need to have more processes, more artisanal processes of cocoa to be able to add value to the beans so that the farmer will get more from the cocoa beans. If not, then the farmer will continue to be poor.
And you talk about Ivory Coast and Ghana. In the past, they've tried to fix the problem by forming an alliance. That's the COPEC I'm talking about. Has it worked in fixing the problem, and will it work?
I mean, that's an interesting question. 4 years ago, around 2019, when this COPEC idea came, it was timely because at that time the market was virtually gone. Cocoa was selling at $1,800 on the international market. So Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire decided to set a floor price, and that gave birth to the Côte d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative. And it helped. It helped in such a way that there was a living income differential that was put on every ton of cocoa that was sold. And that helped to make the price a bit stable for the farmer. But what has happened is that within 4 years, the market has changed to the extent that now the price has gone to the level that nobody anticipated that it would get there. So the usefulness of the Côte d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative is still there, but they need to begin to realign themselves to the changing trends. What are we talking about? We have seen that since there is a lot of demand for beans, the price is going up. Can Ghana Côte d'Ivoire Cocoa Initiative begin to look at production mechanisms? How do we manage the productivity? Should we continue to produce over 3.5 million tons of cocoa every year? Is that helpful to the price? I think all these things, they need to start discussing it. The fundamental logic behind the Côte d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative is laudable, and it's great that Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire are talking at the highest level. It's good, and that they are synergizing their policies. Now, yes, there is still cocoa smuggling, but because of the Ghana Côte d'Ivoire Initiative coming into the space, the smuggling has reduced a bit to the extent that now they set their cocoa prices with each other, knowing that the difference should not be more than 10%. So there is that kind of coordination in it. And so, yes, it is working, but it could work better.
To Mozambique now, where petroleum company Total Energies hopes to resume construction work on the Mozambique LNG project mid-2024. The company says it has revived talks with its original lenders to secure finance for this development, which is expected to cost around $20 billion. Brenda Radido reports.
Palma, a town on the northeast of Mozambique's Cabo Delgado province, is a home to a multi-billion-dollar gas project. The region has rich deposits of liquefied natural gas, and the French energy giant Total, among others, has invested billions in extraction projects there. But it's been far from smooth sailing.
The presence of Total makes that area a target. This is the biggest investment in Africa. This is the most important investment for the government. Any group that wants to, that's angry with the government, that wants to hurt the government, this is the project they're going to focus on.
An ongoing insurgency by Daesh-linked rebels has threatened the security of the area. Over 7 years, the gas project came under attack on several occasions. Unable to guarantee their security, Total was forced to withdraw staff and cease operation. Criminal complaints have been filed against the company for failing to assist their employees. Now, pressure is mounting to find alternative sources to Russia's gas, which was cut off last year due to the war in Ukraine. And Total, with the help of funding partners, is looking to remobilize. But not everyone is happy about it.
The population has no idea what's happening. The population is completely uninformed about what's happening. The government does not communicate, and when it does communicate, it does so based on lies and concealment of information. Community radio is politically controlled, and it only conveys the type of politically controlled information.
The project has attracted the attention of environmental and civil society groups under the banner of the hashtag Say No to Gas. 124 organizations are calling for funding withdrawal from the LNG project. They argue it will fuel human rights violations and insurgent attacks.
If you look at the contracts that Total has with the government, and Eni has with the government, these contracts are very favorable to Mozambique. There's a lot of groups highlighting that we need to renegotiate them, but it's going to be very difficult to renegotiate them. So the actual benefits to Mozambique is very limited.
Mozambique's government is counting on this project to create millions of jobs and lift its citizens from poverty. However, locals are yet to benefit from any of the natural resources.
Problems with typical oil and gas projects is that even while this is a $20 billion project, they don't create a huge amount of work for workers that don't have very specific skills. So it is very important for Total and its partners to make sure that the locals are getting what they were promised.
Mozambique has some of the largest gas reserves in Africa, but needs the help of foreign money and expertise to extract it. The greatest challenge for the local administration is to ensure its own people benefit from its significant natural resources. Brenda Radido, Africa Matters.
30 years ago, the world witnessed a dark chapter in human history. In 1994, ethnic tensions in Rwanda erupted into a genocide against the Tutsi minority. Gqeberha Hito reports that despite the horrors of the past, the country has emerged as a symbol of resilience and reconciliation.
John Gqeberha survived the 1994 Rwandan genocide against the Tutsi. He's forged a life with Marie-Jeanne Uwimana, whose Hutu father was one of the perpetrators.
At first, I thought to myself, won't we get married and then he kills me? But he had already started the journey of unity and reconciliation, which I did not know until we started sharing our testimonies as a couple. And this gave me more strength.
John, now 48, still bears the physical scars of the attacks that claimed the lives of 20 of his siblings. But it's his capacity for forgiveness that truly stands out. John and Marie-Jeanne's unlikely love story began in a reconciliation village, a government initiative aimed at healing the nation's wounds by bringing survivors and perpetrators to live side by side.
First and foremost, it's important to understand that one has to first love himself and have hope. That is, when you will love others, and after that, love your country.
Naftal Ahishakie is the executive secretary of Ibuka, a Rwandan organization that aids genocide victims. He says John's mindset is important for the nation's recovery.
Genocide survivors only wanted a justice. So we said a better way to fight against genocide ideology is to build, to play a big role in the unity and reconciliation process. So it's where the genocide survivors took power to forgive those who committed the genocide.
John and Marie-Jeanne hope that despite the unspeakable tragedy of the past, love and understanding can pave the way to a brighter future. Gqeberha Hito, Africa Matters.
To Kenya now, where an aid group is setting up safe spaces for teenage mothers in informal settlements to continue their education. At least 600 young women have returned to school through the group's program called Funzo, which means lesson in Kiswahili, as Victoria Amunga reports.
Winnie Muyam, a mother of one, remembers growing up in Kenya's Gqeberha slum. Life was a struggle, but she thought this would change when she met the father of her child. But he left when she got pregnant. Muyam was only 15 years old. She had to drop out of school until she successfully enrolled in a program that helps teenage mothers return to class. She joined at least 24 other teenage moms that are studying here.
Even after I gave birth, I saw myself trying to read back the books, to reread things that I've already passed. And I was like, I will go back to school no matter where the money will come back, no matter who will give me that school fees. Even if I will go and request for a loan somewhere and go back to school, I will have to go back to school and even work.
I can go back to school.
Winnie's story is rare. According to a Global Childhood Report 2020, an estimated 98% of girls in Kenya who become pregnant drop out of school, and there are many school dropouts in informal settlements. It's a challenge that aid groups like CFK Africa are taking on. Through community health workers, the group is finding teenage mothers to help back to school. The program is called Funzo, which means lesson in Kiswahili.
It's not just for us to set out this project, but to create conducive, safe spaces within this community. So we're actively working with schools, we're actively working with local leaders to identify schools, to identify churches, among other spaces where young girls can grow and thrive. So one of the key things that we also do is we conduct mentorship session.
They also receive holistic support to find ways to generate income and become financially independent.
Sometimes when the kids are very young and they need to be breastfed, so sometimes they come and ask for permission, they run home lunchtime, then they come back. So sometimes they miss 1 or 2 lessons. And sometimes they also miss lessons when the kids are sick. Yeah, but so far so good. The school administration has accepted them, the students have accepted them, and we are fighting stigma.
Kenya's Ministry of Education adopted a retention policy in 2020 which requires school heads to readmit teenage mothers. But school principals like Michael Waichinga say financial constraints make it difficult.
Some of these parents, some of the girls would like to come back to school. We have talked to them, but still, because of poverty, the parents are not able to bring them back to school. So there is a big gap there. And also reaching to them, knowing where they are.
Around 21 million adolescent girls around the world become pregnant each year. The majority of them from low and middle income countries. It usually forces them to abandon school, but with the help of programs like Funzo, more teenage moms are able to continue their education. Victoria Amunga, Africa Matters, Nairobi, Kenya.
Muslims account for about 10% of the population in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and many in the east of the country find themselves in the middle of a war zone. The conflict has compounded their annual fasting as they find themselves in an increasingly precarious position during the holy month of Ramadan as they prepare for Eid. Yunus Emery reports.
Abdurrahman Kikandi builds a new home for his family as a month of fasting during Ramadan comes to a close.
Fasting is a divine grace that we only have once a year. That's why I force myself to fast. But it's very difficult to fast while traveling. If we were at home, we'd have enough to break our fast every evening.
But they aren't home, and they don't have enough. Abdurrahman and his peers break their fast with rations of rice and tin sardines. They've been forced to flee their hometown, Sake.
This war is now concentrated around Sake, and Sake is the cradle of Islam in North Kivu province, where the very first mosque in the province was built, and it's a city with many Muslims. And because of this war, Muslims, like everyone else, have dispersed into several displaced persons camps. Because of this war and the current difficulty of life, we don't know how to feed our faithful with enough to break the fast this Ramadan.
Recurrent fighting has pushed willful fasting into forced hunger.
We are fasting this Ramadan in very difficult conditions. Our children have neither a meal to start the fast nor one to break the fast. We have nowhere to find food, and if we go back to Sake to look for it, we are attacked by the rebels.
The M23 militia, who have alleged ties with Rwanda, have made significant territorial gains in eastern Congo, seeking to claim a large portion of the $24 trillion worth of natural resources in the DRC. They've been met with fierce resistance from the Congolese army, but already almost 1 million civilians have been forced out of their homes, and 1 in 4 into hunger. As M23 continues its advance, all eyes are set on Goma, the region's economic hub, where most of the displaced have settled.
I fled the attacks from Sake to the sounds of bombs and gunshots with my 6 children. Since we arrived here, we haven't received any assistance, and we are hungry and do not know what to do.
A quarter of the world's population celebrates the end of a month of fasting with a 3-day holiday called Eid. But Congolese Muslims find themselves with little to celebrate. Yunus Emre, Africa Matters.
And finally this week, we are heading to Gqeberha, the city formerly known as Port Elizabeth on South Africa's east coast. It's an important hub for the South African car industry with one of the largest seaports in the country. That's our show this week. Let us know of what you think about the stories you've seen. Share your ideas and feedback. You can find us on X and on YouTube by searching TRT World Africa Matters. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Isaac Kaleji, in Accra, Ghana.